Good evening, and welcome to the Sheriff Candidates Forum. I'm Steve Kirby, current chair of the Community Media Center's Board of Directors. As many of you know, over the years, the Community Media Center has produced numerous election forums for the League of Women Voters. However, several months after the primary election, we were informed that the Carroll County League of Women Voters would be no longer active. As a public media center, we felt it was our responsibility to continue to provide the residents of Carroll County with the opportunity to learn as much as possible about the candidates running for local office. The Community Media Center is not affiliated with any political party, group, or organization. To ensure that all positions and points of view are equally represented, we invited all candidates to participate in the forum and to submit questions they would like to have included. We've partnered with Carroll County Times, WTTR, and the Hometown Observer to publicize this event, and we are pleased to make this forum available live, on air, and online. Tonight's forum is being held at Carroll Community College. The program is being streamed live on Channel 19 and on the Community Media Center's website at carrollmediacenter.org, and it will be rebroadcast on WTTR 1470 AM. Our moderator for the evening is Mr. Bill Butts, Chair of the Mount Airy Planning and Zoning Commission. I'll turn the program over to him to read the rules for tonight's forum. Bill.
All right, thanks, Steve. Good evening. I will introduce each of our two candidates vying for this race, and then each of the candidates will have up to 2 minutes for an opening statement. Following the introductions, I'll ask the first of the several questions that we have in front of us. Some of those have come from the candidates themselves, some have come from our attendees out of the audience tonight. Each candidate will have, again, up to 2 minutes to respond to each of the questions, and we will proceed through each of the questions with both of them having a chance to respond. They'll answer the identical question. Then we'll move on to the next question. Once all the candidates have answered the questions, we will allow up to a final 2 minutes, we will allow up to 2 minutes for rebuttal if any candidate wishes to add anything else. And at the conclusion of the question period before the ending of the forum this evening, each candidate will have up to 2 minutes for a final summary statement. Responses are being timed. Timekeepers will use cue cards and a bell to signal the remaining time. The timekeeper will ring a bell approximately 2 to 3 seconds after the final stop signal has been given to the candidates, and I will immediately interrupt the candidate and discontinue the statement or answer at that time, and microphones will be silenced as a result. The questions have been selected in advance by the candidates themselves and from tonight's live audience, where we've had the same questions asked. I've merged those, but in as much as possible, we're trying to use all the questions that have been submitted. Tonight's forum is being recorded, and so we ask, if you haven't already done so, that everyone turn off their cell phones and that attendees refrain from applause or making noise during the forum or doing anything visible or audible to express support or opposition to any of the candidates during the forum. And with that, let us begin. Our two candidates this evening are Vincent C. Pacelli and Jim DeWeese. And we'll give each of them, starting with Mr. Pacelli, the chance to introduce themselves to you. Up to 2 minutes each.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vince Pacelli. I am the Democratic candidate for sheriff. I want to thank all of you for being here, especially on this rainy night and at this hour. I am a 26-year resident of Carroll County. My wife, Ruth, and I have been married for 33 years. We have 4 children, ages 20 to 31. Our youngest son is serving with the United States Marine Corps stationed in Camp Lejeune. I came to Maryland in 1979 when I joined the Baltimore Police Department. I spent 25 years there and had a variety of assignments. I retired as a detective lieutenant. I spent the next couple of years as the director of security at the University of Maryland Medical Center, where shock trauma is. And for the last 7 years, I've been a member of the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. Something that's come up in recent weeks as I've made my way around is, why am I running as a Democrat? Some of you may know that 4 years ago I was a Republican candidate for county commissioner in District 1. Last summer, I was watching who was filing for sheriff. I felt I was the guy for the job. Those of you who follow primary politics or primary elections know that three people in a primary is a crowd, and anything after that is a mob. I said, how can we do this? I discussed with people in and out of government. I came to realize that in the 30-plus years that I've been in law enforcement, nobody has ever asked me my party affiliation when I arrived at their home or at the scene of a traffic accident. Nobody calls the police and requests a Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, or Green Party candidate. I was inspired by James Webb, former U.S. Senator from Virginia, who switched from Republican to Democrat and ran for the U.S. Senate. I think as a law enforcement officer, it was easy to do because I serve the public. I don't judge people by who they are. When they call for help, I help them. Thank you.
All right, Mr. DeWeese.
Good evening. I'd like to start by thanking the Community Media Center, WTTR, and the Carroll County Times. These three organizations have done a wonderful job providing local political candidates with free and inexpensive ways to get their message to the voters and the issues that affect Carroll County residents. My name is Jim DeWeese, and I am the Republican nominee for the office of sheriff. I'm 43 years old, and I'm the married father of 3 children. My wife, Heather, is a Carroll County public school teacher, and all 3 of my children attend Carroll County public schools. I'm currently a captain and division commander for the Maryland State Police. I was previously the operations commander for the Washington Metropolitan Region, commander of both the Westminster and Golden Ring Barracks, investigations commander here in Carroll County, criminal investigator, and for the last 15 years, I've been an operator, team leader, and commander of the Maryland State Police SWAT team. The most prevailing issue in Carroll County is the emerging drug issue and crime related to it. Repeat offenders and criminals are coming in from other jurisdictions because they believe we are soft on crime, and they're set up in our communities and they're operating today. It is my responsibility to work with other law enforcement agencies and the many stakeholders in the criminal justice system to make it as uncomfortable for those people as possible. I have a plan to address the issues, and I hope tonight's forum offers some insight in helping you decide who to vote for. And I have a couple of seconds, so I have to say hi to my children. Brett, Gavin, and Mackenzie are at home watching. Brett and Gavin are 10 and 12. You guys can go and watch the World Series game. Mackenzie has to watch the rest of this for her government class at Manchester Valley High, so I have to say hi to Manchester Valley High class of 2018. So that's it. Thank you.
All right. And with that, we'll begin with the questions. First question, and we'll ask Mr. Pacelli to respond first. What is your plan to reduce response time, and what do you believe is an achievable target response time?
Response times in Carroll County is very difficult. As you know, we have something like 400 square miles to cover. We usually have 9 deputies. There are a number of things we can do, and what I plan on doing is streamlining our operations, removing some of the responsibilities that our road deputies have, freeing them up for time for patrols in neighborhoods plagued with crime. And how we're going to do that, and we've touched on this in the past, and what I'm accustomed to coming out of the Baltimore Police Department is what's called a CompStat process, where we look at crime data, day of the week, time of the day, so on and so forth, and we plan and strategize appropriately to make sure that we have deputies in the areas where we need them. By relieving them of some of their mundane duties that can be handled elsewhere, perhaps even by telephone. I have experience with the telephone reporting unit in Baltimore. That will free up some of the time. By tracking crime, statistically, as I did as a Baltimore City Police Lieutenant and Sergeant, we can target areas at the times that the crimes are happening. This will greatly reduce response times. We'll get to situations much quicker. And if the plan, and the plan will work correctly, is we'll be reducing crime with this data-driven plan where we look at the data, we study it, we develop appropriate tactics, we bring in appropriate resources. So you don't spread pixie dust over the problem and solve it. You have to do a whole bunch of things. You have to look at what's occupying their time right now. You have to reprioritize and get everybody thinking about crime. That in itself will start getting things moving in the right direction.
Right. Mr. DeWeese, what is your plan to reduce response time, and what do you believe is an achievable target in that regard?
Response times are a tricky topic. So if you're talking about a 911 call, we certainly want the closest police officer, regardless of what agency they're with, whether it's a trooper, a deputy, or an officer, to respond to that particular location. If you're talking about somebody that's got a theft report that needs to be taken, or a barking dog, as long as they're prioritized appropriately, you can get the response time down. And I think the 911 center does that. And I think the duty officers at the sheriff's office also prioritize that. But what I don't see in the organization is accountability in particular areas where the calls are higher than they are in other parts of the county. What needs to take place in the organization is that it needs to start running and looking like an efficient police department, and it needs to be accountable to the citizens it serves in the particular geographic areas that it serves it in. There needs to be command accountability when it comes to response times and every aspect of policing. My plan is to break the organization up into 3 different districts and have a commander in charge of that particular district to deal with response times, to deal with criminal issues, and to deal with quality of life issues that take place in the southern part of the county, in the central part of the county, in the northern part of the county. So essentially, a responsibility when it comes to response times and getting folks there in a timely manner, but holding people accountable and prioritizing where they go and what they do.
All right, very good. Anyone want to add anything to what you've already said?
I do.
Okay.
I agree with Mr. DeWeese. Accountability has to be pushed down to the lowest level. You start with command staff through middle management, first line supervisors, right on down to the deputies. And you do this by looking at the data and tracking where crime has occurred. Where I disagree, he talks about dividing into districts. That's called sector management. We experimented with sector management in 2 districts in Baltimore City. The Baltimore City Police Department does have 9 police districts. We implemented a pilot program in 2 of those districts, sector management. It didn't work out too well. There were competing interests. It was additional bureaucracy, and we eventually got rid of it. It adds additional personnel that you may or may not need. Quality of life issues, they are handled the way they are handled right now. Again, I'm a 7-year member of the Sheriff's Office. We do some things very well. Some things we need to improve. There's no doubt about it. I think we do a good job with quality of life issues. I disagree with sector management. I've had experience with it. In urban areas that are rife with crime, we try to do everything we possibly can to solve it. We tried that. It did not work. I don't think it will work in Carroll County. Thank you.
All right. Very good.
Sure. Look, the city police didn't get rid of its 9 districts, so it still has it. So there's accountability in each district for whatever takes place, whether it's response times or crime, and that's what needs to take place here. There needs to be accountability to a particular area of the county, to a particular municipality. The issues in the northern part of the county are different than they are in the southern part of the county. But when it comes to districting, that's exactly the direction this organization needs to go. There needs to be accountability from the north down to the south and everything in between. So the city didn't get rid of its districts. There's accountability there. And those people are put on the hot seat at CompStat, and their response time is an issue. And the other issues of crime are issues that they have to deal with. Sector management is within the district itself, not the entire district.
All right, very good. Next question. Each of you represent a different political party. How would you instill your party's values as sheriff of Carroll County? Mr. DeWeese, if you will respond first.
Well, I'm the Republican nominee. And I am a conservative guy. You know, an individual's rights, their property rights, less government, smaller government. Those are the party values, and I really don't believe it matters what party you belong to. I think that a good, reasonable person expects that from government in general. It doesn't really matter. But when it comes to political parties, policing is not partisan at all. You don't care who shows up at your house. So it's my job as the sheriff to keep politics out of the sheriff's office. I'm the only politician. As long as the deputies are doing things morally, ethically, and constitutionally correct, then politics has no place in the sheriff's office. So as a Republican nominee, I definitely want to make sure that I stay fiscally responsible, and I make sure that government doesn't make its way into people's homes needlessly, and protect people's constitutional rights. But when it comes to political parties, I don't see policing as partisan at all.
All right. Mr. Pacelli, how would you instill your party's values as sheriff of Carroll County?
I would agree with Mr. DeWeese, and I covered that in my opening statement. I don't look at the office of the sheriff as being partisan. I view it more like the school board. Like I said before, you don't call 911 and ask for a Republican, Democrat, police officer, trooper, or deputy to come to your house. Carroll County Democrats are fiscally conservative. I've had the luxury of walking in both camps as I have switched parties, and I can't be more impressed with everybody in both parties. And I think in Carroll County, I'm not speaking state or nationally, in Carroll County we are much more alike than we are different. So when we're talking party differences, I can't really go into that. As the sheriff, you know, my job is to ensure the safety of our neighborhoods. My job is to ensure commitment to the United States Constitution. My job is to protect the rights of the people. I don't see political parties playing a role in that.
All right. Very good. Anyone want a rebuttal time?
No, sir.
All right. Next question. Do you feel there's an opportunity to reorganize the Sheriff's Department to improve efficiency and cut costs? And if so, what are your thoughts in that regard? Mr. Pacelli?
Yes, I think we do need to reorganize. Right now, the way the Sheriff's Office is set up, you have, and we'll just talk patrol groups right now, we have four patrol groups, we have 12-hour shifts, we have a lieutenant, a sergeant, 2 corporals, and approximately 10 deputies. I find that very inefficient. I view the lieutenant as no more than a sergeant 2.0. My plan would to turn the lieutenants into true commanders, where the deputies, sergeants, and corporals will work the 12-hour shifts. The lieutenants will be assigned to 2 groups. So the 2 groups that are on day work, that lieutenant will see them throughout the week. This will streamline the operation. It will make the lieutenant a true commander as I push accountability down to the lowest level. That commander will be flexible and have, right now they're not true commanders. They just sit there. Everything is centralized. I want to decentralize it, which will improve efficiency, which will create an environment where creativity can flourish as deputies work with residents through partnership to come up with solutions. One of the critical things I see here is our lieutenants are not commanders by any stretch of the imagination. Everything is dictated from the top down. That must stop. That's where you get the accountability. If you're going to hold people accountable, you have to let them do the job. You have to let them work their groups, look at the data, staff it properly, rotate people around to high crime areas, and get that whole approach going. It's completely opposite from what we're doing right now. As I said, it's very centralized. Everything is dictated from the top. That must change, and I think by having lieutenants oversee 2 groups allows them to be true commanders, true leaders, and able to mentor their subordinates much more efficiently.
Mr. DeWeese, do you feel there's an opportunity to reorganize the Sheriff's Department and improve efficiency and cut costs in the process? If so, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, you're going to hear me say a lot that the organization needs to look and run like an efficient police department. And I've said this before, if the fire departments ran operations the way a lot of police departments do, a number of houses would burn to the ground because we have them all centrally located. We have to start looking at, again, geographic responsibility. When you talk about lieutenants and you talk about how an efficient police department runs and whether they're, you can call them any rank you want to call them as long as they have responsibility. But when it comes to how that organization operates, they have a lieutenant that sits at the desk. Their most experienced person, the one with the most knowledge, is sitting at the desk, and they're kind of tied to it. So they really can't get up and leave when something major happens and organize and coordinate and oversee a particular situation. So yes, lieutenants got to get off the desk. They absolutely have to get off the desk, and we have to come up with a plan in order to put either a junior officer, a desk officer, or something of that nature there. But that's a small issue, and that's kind of a Band-Aid to what goes on. We need to start utilizing districting as soon as possible so that we can get our lieutenants or captains or whatever you want to call them have command responsibility to portions of the county. There needs to be reorganization that way. We also need to start a repeat offender unit. We absolutely have to start a repeat offender unit. There are drug issues that are taking place in this county. We know who's doing it. Why aren't we targeting them, monitoring, tracking, and making their lives uncomfortable? We need to reorganize CID and how they operate and enhance what they're doing and give them a little bit more resources to do their job. So there's a lot of reorganization that needs to take place in the sheriff's office. There's a couple of Band-Aids that need to start at first, but the totality of the organization needs to start modeling a real efficient police department.
All right, any rebuttal?
The only thing I want to say, again, regarding department.
All right, any rebuttal?
The only thing I want to say, again, regarding this district management, we have to caution ourselves about bureaucracy. We have to caution ourselves about getting bigger than what we really need. We have to remember that we do have a tight budget. We have competing interests, the schools, our emergency medical or fire departments, and law enforcement, and we can't get ahead of ourselves. I think with some tweaking and the accountability, Jim is absolutely right. The accountability does not exist right now. It does need to exist, and that will be a huge change for personnel in the sheriff's office. I just want to be careful about bureaucracy. Right now, we have too many bosses. That's been a big problem because there's a concept out there, unity of command, where everybody reports to one person. That was one of the big deals with sector management. I understand what he's saying with the districts. I just don't think Carroll County, at least at this point in time, needs that extra bureaucracy. You can still have the accountability. You can still have your commanders. You can still push accountability all the way down to the bottom. But we don't need that extra bureaucracy.
All right.
Do I get rebuttal?
Absolutely.
Because I think they've already started that, and they're going in that direction. I mean, they already put a building up in the southern end of the county to service those folks. They have a CID up north. Why it's up there, I have no idea why. But it is up there, and it needs to be brought back centrally and dispatched to the districts when they're created. And they already have a central location. That's the sheriff's office. So they're already going in that direction. Why not put commanders in those facilities and have them accountable to the areas that they're already in where they have established buildings? Why not do that? That's the direction they want to go. I'm just going to put it in that direction a little faster.
Okay. Next question. Recently, the federal government looked at the former Military Reserve Center on Malcolm Drive in Westminster to house unaccompanied minors that came into the United States through the Mexican border. As sheriff, how would you handle this situation? Would you attempt to stop the children from being housed in Carroll County? And if so, how would you stop it from happening? And I believe, Mr. Pacelli, are you first this time?
Could be. I don't know.
Well, let's do it.
Yeah, that was a very difficult situation, and certainly our heart goes out to these children. I would work closely with the other elected officials in the county, very similar to what happened here. We have to be mindful of how complex this issue is. It's extremely complex, and again, it's involving children. There's more to it than just finding a building and putting children in it. The concerns I thought the county brought up were legitimate as far as the safety of that building. It had been unoccupied for quite some time. The federal government and the county, I think, worked out their differences. Does the sheriff have the authority to put the stops to that? Some would say they do. I would say that we need to work with our elected officials, both at the state and federal level, to come to some type of solution. It is a federal government problem that doesn't absolve anybody from any other responsibility. It is tricky. Immigration is difficult. There are competing interests. We have politicians looking for voters. We have businesses looking for employees. We have cartel members engaged in human trafficking. So we have a wide spectrum of issues here, very sensitive. I thought the way it went down recently was more than adequate. I thought Our elected officials worked closely together. I know some people did not agree with that decision, but that's how I would approach it. Very similar to the way it happened right now, and hopefully it would not come to the sheriff putting the stops on everything. I think there's more than enough resources out there and informed people that we could get together and come up with a reasonable solution.
Mr. DeWeese?
So all federal issues at some point become local issues. They just do. Because when you have thousands of people that flood the Mexican border into the United States, you have to put them somewhere. What are you going to do? Turn them around and hand them a gallon of water and say, I hope it gets you back to wherever it is you came from? You can't do that. You got to treat people with respect and humanely. Is there a problem at the Mexican border? Absolutely. The problem's actually at the South American-Mexican border. So that's a federal issue that needs to be addressed. But if you think for 1 second that I'm going to stand at the county line with a cowboy hat on and a shotgun and say, you're not coming into my county, you're wrong. It is a federal property. They can use it as they see fit. But when that came out and that was actually addressed, I knew the second it was brought up that they weren't going to use that facility. It's riddled with asbestos and lead paint. They'd have to mow it over and put a new facility there. And it was almost like a test, and it was a test that we failed. Because I think that the people in our community, the citizens, expect their politicians and their political leaders and their community leaders to have real, intelligent conversations about how to handle that issue. And I don't think that happened. And so, as the sheriff, I do have concerns if that bus would show up here. And I have security concerns. And the health department has health department concerns. And Mr. Guthrie and the school board have school concerns. We all have concerns. But I think everybody can get together and intelligently discuss how to handle that situation. And hell no is not the answer. It's never the answer. And if anybody thinks it is, then shame on them. Shame on them. They are children. You're not going to turn them around on a bus and send them back to Mexico. It's just not going to happen. Treat them with respect and figure out the problem and let people know what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Be open and get community input. But I think the way we handled what wasn't appropriate.
All right. Mr. Pacelli, you've already answered this question or not?
No, I did answer this question.
That's what I thought.
The only thing I would like to say is that this was not the first place that this occurred. It has occurred throughout the country, and Jim is absolutely right. Intelligent discussion has to be made. But I think what's happening with the immigration issue, because the federal government isn't doing what the vast majority of the people want done, is that the people are, in the true democratic fashion, are saying, hey, you guys got to take care of it. Nobody is suggesting that they would put these children on a bus and drive them back through Mexico. That's not going to happen. It's just, I think, the way the federal government comes in and tries to push people around. And the county, and I wasn't privy to any of these discussions, I'm just saying the county looked at this facility and said, hey, this is not going to happen. This is not going to happen. So I agree with Jim on a lot of those points. The people do have a right to stand up and say, hey, let's not so fast, let's work this out. But I don't think anybody in county government, I'm not defending them, I didn't hear about it, that says, hey, let's put these people on a bus, give them a jug of water, and send them back across the desert. I don't think that happened.
Right.
I believe there's some in county government that would, and that's arguable. But you know, they're here, and the state of Texas cannot absorb 40, 50,000 people. And no, I'm not into opening our borders and saying come hither. I'm not, and I do believe that there needs to be border control. But I'll reiterate that. You know, we see people all the time that are homeless and without food, and I hear these people say, well, you know, we got starving kids in Baltimore, but I never read in the religion section where a church group went to Baltimore to save those kids. They took a trip to Guatemala, and they took a trip to South America somewhere, and they built churches, hospitals, and schools for them. Well, now they're here, and they're asking for our help. And what are you doing? Standing at your ivory tower saying, no, you can't come here. Don't come to my house. I'll come to yours. It's not appropriate. The way we handled that was a test, and we failed miserably at it. And I would hope to God that the next Board of Commissioners, the next sheriff, and the next political leaders handle it a bit differently. Whether they come here or not, and whether we agree that they should be here or not, I think we have to have intelligent discussion and open discussion with the public. But I don't agree with how that was handled.
All right. Next question, and Mr. DeWeese, you'll have the first response. This is actually a merge of two different questions. Have you received any campaign donations from a union or from outside of the county? If so, who and how much, and what is their interest in our law enforcement concerns in Carroll County?
Well, my aunt and uncle live in Baltimore County, but I don't think that they came to a couple of bull roasts. But if you're talking about political action money from unions, no, not a dime. All of my donations came from either a bull roast or a golf tournament or some sort of fundraiser that I did. And the degree of separation between the people I know and the people that brought them was probably one or two. But any special interest? Absolutely not. The only thing they had an interest in was me being the sheriff, and that's it.
All right, Mr. Pacelli, have you received any campaign donations from either a union or a source outside of the county? If so, who, how much, and what is their interest in Carroll County law enforcement?
I received some donations from family members who live in Virginia and Tennessee. I received a donation from a couple who owns property in Carroll County, but actually reside in Montgomery County. And I received a donation from FOP Lodge number 3, which is not a union. I spoke with the president, Bob Cherry, just the other day and confirmed that FOP Lodge 3 is not a union. I am a member of FOP Lodge 3, and as I mentioned earlier, I did 25 years with the Baltimore City Police Department, and I was actually Bob Cherry, the president of FOP Lodge 3's first sergeant when he came out of the police academy. Outside of that, I've not received any money from any political action committees, special interest groups, and just a handful that actually reside outside the county.
All right.
Look, I don't have a dog in the union fight, but I got to disagree with you because FOP Lodge 3 is a union. It is the bargaining union for the Baltimore City Police Department. We went over this last week.
We did, and I can pull up the text message, Jim, that I got from Bob Cherry, who was quite clear that they're not a union.
Well, and he doesn't know what a union is either.
He's the
because it says it
president.
on their
He
website.
says they have collective bargaining. They're not a full-fledged union. They cannot strike. I can read you the text.
If they have collective bargaining, who bargains for them? FOP Lodge 3 does.
But not a union. But they're not a union.
Okay.
All right. Next question. And I believe, Mr. Pacelli, you get to respond first this time. As Chief of Police in Carroll County, would you consider training for the 8 small-town police forces, in particular for spousal abuse?
Could you repeat that, please?
As Chief of Police in Carroll County, would you consider training for the 8 small-town community police, in particular for spousal abuse?
Would I consider training their personnel, specifically in regard to spousal abuse? Well, first of all, the sheriff is not the chief of police. There is quite a distinction, but absolutely, I would be more than happy to train our municipal officers in regard to spousal abuse. Without doubt, I would be on board with that.
All right.
I think you train them in anything they want to be trained in, but I don't believe that they're not trained adequately. They go through the same training that a sheriff's deputy and a state trooper go through. Maryland Police Training Commission requires in-service training each year, and I presume that they go through domestic violence cases as well. But I know all the police chiefs extremely well in this county, and I know that they're extremely qualified people that do a good job with their organization. So I don't see where that's coming from, quite honestly. I think joint training and boning up on things is great, but to say that these guys don't have the training or they're not doing things adequately, I know those guys and I know that they are. So yeah, if they want training, sure, I'll be more than happy to help them with training. But I believe that the agencies are doing a good job, those municipalities.
Right. Any rebuttal?
No.
Okay. Next question, and let's see, Mr. DeWeese, you're first this time. What do you see as opportunities for the county to work with both state police and local jurisdictions?
Well, it's a broad question. They already do, but policing in Carroll County is not a one-agency problem. It requires the federal government, the state government, the sheriff's office, and the incorporated municipalities, their police agencies, in order to accomplish policing in this county. They're already working in conjunction with a drug task force. What I would like to see is the federal government do a little bit more when it comes to the heroin issue that we have, and work jointly with them. Currently, the state police handles the homicides that take place here, and unfortunately there have been a couple over the last few weeks, and those are good resources, and that is a particular expertise that requires a specialty. So I'm perfectly content with them coming in and working with the sheriff's office investigators to do homicides, but there needs to be regular collaboration between the police chiefs, the state police barrack commander and their hierarchy, and the federal government, both from the FBI, the DEA, and the ATF, in order to accomplish what needs to be accomplished here. And so I think it's already being done, but I think it requires a law enforcement leader to bring those people a little closer together and work a little bit more efficiently. And I think that I'll easily be able to get that done, bring them all to the table. Listen, there's regular police chief meetings, and not all the police chiefs show up at these meetings. Why, I don't know. But they need to, and I need to be able to get those folks to the table so that we can discuss issues that affect their municipalities and the county. I need to be able to get the state police commander to the table with the police chiefs, with the federal government on a regular basis, so that we can efficiently deal with the issues in this county. But I don't believe that's being done right now.
I agree with everything Jim said. As Director of Security at the Medical Center, believe it or not, we work with police agencies from Northern Virginia all the way to Boston, Massachusetts, so I completely understand the partnership involved in successfully handling crime, especially in a county like Carroll County, where we have municipal departments, we have the state police, we do have a federal presence when necessary. So yes, he's right on the money with that, and I couldn't agree more.
All right. Any rebuttal, Mr. DeWeese?
No, sir.
Okay. Next question, and Mr. Pacelli, you get to respond first this time. I'm not familiar with this term, so I'll ask the question as it was written. What is your take on community policing, and how would you implement it?
I am a big proponent of community policing, especially the 3 Ps of community policing: partnership, problem solving, and prevention. Partnership being the operative word. When we employ partnership, we show value in each other. That leads to prevention and problem solving. I implemented the 3 Ps as a Baltimore City Police Lieutenant with great success. I did the same thing at the University of Maryland Medical Center, where we were able to reduce crime by over 50%. We had such dramatic results that I was able to have an article published in a national magazine about it, and the whole key was the 3 Ps of community policing: partnership, problem solving, and prevention. It does take a little bit of effort to implement, especially in Carroll County, where we are so traffic-oriented in our enforcement practices, but it certainly can be done. I've used it with great success in the town of Union Bridge. It can be used with great success even in our more rural or sparsely populated areas. It's a change in mindset that not forces, but it allows deputies to engage with the public, to partner with them. I know I'm being repetitive, but that is the key. Partnership is the key. Law enforcement should not be above or below the citizens we serve, but should be part of the community. And the whole key there is partnership. So I'm very familiar with community policing. I'm very familiar with implementing it. I did it successfully, not only in Baltimore, but the University of Maryland Medical Center, and used the same techniques in Union Bridge.
All right, Mr. DeWeese, what is your take on community policing, and how would you implement it?
I think they're already doing it, and I think they're doing a good job at it. You know, my children know Deputy Lawrence. They know the troopers and officers and deputies that come into their schools and teach them. I see the sheriff's deputies get out of their cars and walk around towns, and folks know who they are. So I think that they're doing a good job of being good community leaders. Can we enhance it? Absolutely. I tell you, one of the programs I was extremely disappointed that they got rid of was the DARE program. And you know, everybody knows Worthy Washington. Everybody knows him. He's like Santa Claus when he walks around the carnivals because the kids are hanging off of him. And that's community policing. He teaches those kids, he's in the community, and they all know who he is. They go to him. And I think that if the deputies are in the schools more, then it enhances the community policing part of what we're doing. But to say that they're not doing community policing, or I've got to implement something to get them out of their cars and force them to do community policing, I don't believe that's happening at all because I've seen them do it, and I know they're doing the best that they can with it. Slowing the amount of calls that they respond to down so that they can take more time to do community policing, that needs to be looked at. But I think they're doing a wonderful job with what they're doing already.
All right. Rebuttal?
As a member of the Carroll County Sheriff's Office in patrol, there is no emphasis on community policing. Now, if those officers or deputies are doing it, they're doing it on their own, and they are to be commended. But there is no community policing going on. In fact, I talk to my peers who tell me that they forego doing some criminal investigations due to the pressure applied to them to do traffic enforcement. That is not community policing. Community policing is more of a mindset and philosophy. I understand what he is saying about the schools. That's perfect. That is part of community policing, but as an overriding philosophy, we do not have that, and it's something I think we dearly need to work on because it can be very successful.
All right. Next question. Carroll County has seen an alarming increase in overdoses and deaths related to heroin. What is your plan to address this increase and the crime associated with it? Mr. Pacelli?
Since 2007, the United States has seen a more than 100% increase in heroin use and heroin overdose. It is a chronic problem in Carroll County. I would like to see the Carroll County Sheriff's Office develop its own drug unit to attack this problem. I would also like to investigate overdoses where we go backwards, following almost like a criminal investigation, where we go back to the source. This obviously would involve what we both touched on earlier, partnership with allied agencies. Right now, what we do is we do document that an overdose occurred. Where that information goes, I'm not sure, but I would like to see more involvement in that. In other words, we have an overdose victim, treat this person as the victim of a crime, and conduct an investigation from that standpoint, working backwards to discover the source, just like you would have any other crime. We have a shooting victim as an example. What happened here? Where was this person traveling? Who was this person associated with? And work it back just like a criminal investigation. And hopefully we can start to develop enough information. And with allied agencies, since it would certainly, in most cases, take us outside of Carroll County, we can identify the source and go from there. So I'd like to make it more of a priority. Everybody here knows it's a serious issue and it needs to be addressed a little bit more aggressively, not a little bit, but far more aggressively than we're doing now.
Mr. Deweese?
Yeah, it's simply the root of all evil in this county right now. The overwhelming majority of the crime that's being committed, whether it's burglaries or thefts or even our violent crime, is because there's a particular addiction need to either go out and steal or commit a violent crime, and it's usually heroin or cocaine. So the Sheriff's Office is already doing the investigation backwards. I know this because I regularly speak with the Drug Task Force, and they go out on these cases and they backtrack, like my opponent's saying, they backtrack already. So they're already doing that. There needs to be, so you have prevention, education, treatment, enforcement, and you have all these other community organizations that are out there trying to address the heroin problem. But they're all working somewhat independently, and they're not really collaborating together. And if they are, it's not at a level where decisions are being made so that we can attack the problem from the top down. So the sheriff, the school board president, the folks over at the health department, all the leaders of those organizations need to get together and speak on a regular basis about how to attack the heroin problem. A street level unit needs to be developed immediately so that we are making things uncomfortable for the folks from Baltimore and the folks from New York that are coming here and dealing drugs. They're set up here, folks. Get in your car and drive down Main Street and you'll find them. They are set up here already. We need to make life uncomfortable for them. And so how do you do it? You work with the municipalities, you develop a street level unit, and you go after those folks. You go after them hard, and you prosecute them hard. They don't believe they're going to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And when they do get prosecuted, they know they're not going to jail. So they're right back out doing it again. But there needs to be a hard, fast approach to dealing with the heroin issue, and it's all about collaboration with the stakeholders.
All right. Any rebuttal, Mr. Pichelli? This is a related question, and it's appeared on at least 2 or 3 that have been submitted, and it's specific. As sheriff, how will you address the increasing drug problem with our youth and in our schools? Mr. Louise?
It's a lot of the same tactics when you deal with the schools, but the important thing about the schools is how early are you getting in to educate those children about the issue of drugs and heroin. So how early are we getting in there and getting to them? And I believe with the DARE program, we were getting to them pretty early. My sons and my daughter saw the deputies and troopers in 2nd grade. And they developed a relationship with them throughout their schooling, and at different levels they were taught different things. So do the schools have an issue with drugs? Absolutely. Are kids bringing drugs into the schools and selling them? Absolutely. It's important to work with the security director. It's important to work with the wonderful people over at the school board, the principals, and everybody alike. But I know that there's being complaints that are called into the schools, from the schools to different agencies, and they're not being handled appropriately. There are several cases where cases weren't being taken seriously and they've fallen through the cracks. And we need to, when we go into these schools, take it seriously and handle them a little differently. There's been some discussion about whether we should do canine scans on a regular basis in the schools. And I'm not a huge fan of canine scans in the schools. I don't think they're very productive. If there's a specific need for it, then let's do it. But a principal and an administrator has a different level of seizing authority than I as a police officer do. They work off of suspicion. If little Johnny says another little Johnny has drugs in their locker, they can go and search that locker. So we need to empower them to be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to handling the issues in school. But I don't believe canine scans are the issue. I believe we get to them early and we educate and we prevent, and then when there is an issue, we attack it as quickly as we can.
All right, Mr. Pichelli?
I agree with Jim's assessment. What I would add to it is I would like to see a social media analysis unit developed where we look at Facebook, we look at Twitter, we look at all of these different social media outlets, and of course partnering with our local schools is critical. Through a social media outlet, we can get ahead of the game, we can get ahead of the drug use, we can get ahead of the underage drinking. Of course, we need people who are specifically trained to do that. They are working on something like that in Chicago. They've had some success there. I think it would certainly work here. It would show our young people that we're certainly paying attention and taking everything more seriously. So a collaborative effort, like Jim was alluding to, a holistic effort is necessary. I would like to see a social media analysis unit. I would also like to take a page out of Dr. Kennedy's ceasefire program that he developed in Chicago and is now being used in Baltimore, or developed in Baltimore. I would certainly modify it because we're not talking about school violence as they experience in Chicago, but we could use a modified version where we bring all the stakeholders together. We bring law enforcement, state's attorney's office, probation, juvenile services, and we take that approach as well. And what that does is it sends a message to a young person's peers that if this person who has been in trouble, perhaps was taken into custody with drugs, we approach the peers and say, if this person continues to get in trouble, we're bringing the full resources of the sheriff's office, local law enforcement down on them. They've had some success with that. So I would just add those 2 or 3 components.
All right.
So the health department already does monitor social media, and they do a pretty good job of it. And whether they're doing it on their own or it's just something that one of their directors said to do. But I know this because I get calls from the folks over at the health department regularly about what they're seeing on social media. And most people know that the kids that are doing this stuff don't hide too much on social media. So they have an awful lot of information that they can pass on to law enforcement. There's already a tips line that's set up at the sheriff's office so that calls can be sent in to the tips line anonymously. So there are things that are being done to assist with the issues that are taking place in school, but the social media is already being looked at, and as long as these folks get together and stop operating independently and share the information that they're obtaining, then we can really make a dent in what goes on in the schools. But I don't see that happening right now, and it needs to start happening.
All right. Any additional comment?
Well, I would stick with having a social media unit or social media analysis unit in the sheriff's office, because that cuts down on communication. That cuts down on the timeline. If these other agencies are doing that, I don't feel it, I don't hear it getting to the sheriff's office. If there's a communication gap, this way, if we're accessing the information, we can act on it much more efficiently and quicker.
All right. Next question, and I believe, Mr. Pacelli, you get to answer first this time. In your opinion, how bad is the gang problem in Carroll County, and what plans do you have to deal with it?
The gang problem we have is certainly not as big as you would find in Baltimore City or Baltimore County. My concern is just over into Baltimore County on Route 26, there is considerable gang activity, and it has moved into Carroll County. We have seen it. We've seen the evidence of it. We've seen it in South Carroll. Sometimes when you look at a gang, it may not fit the stereotypical definition of a gang, but it's certainly a gang. I uncovered what was a gang operating in Union Bridge, a criminal enterprise. It had a queen, it had lieutenants. They were committing burglaries, theft from vehicles, selling drugs. So that is something that certainly needs to be looked into. A few years back, we did have a grant-funded gang. I can't remember exactly the title, but they were looking into that, and that's something we need to stay abreast of. Howard County has a gang problem, Baltimore County, Baltimore City. So being proactive, getting out in front of the issue is something critical. I think we can use detention center personnel. They are a rich source of intelligence. They have somebody who works on gang issues there. So we can broaden our scope with that and do our very best to stay ahead of that issue. But we have to be proactive, because I think we're going to see gang activity, serious gang activity in the future. We're already seeing in recent weeks a spike in violent crime. Whether that's gang-related or not, I don't know. But it certainly could be a precursor to additional gang activity.
Mr. DeWeese, in your opinion, how bad is the gang problem in Carroll County, and what plans do you have to deal with it?
Yeah, listen, when they start shooting at each other and killing each other on the side of the roads, I think it's a pretty bad problem. So a gang from New York sets up a fella down here, and he's selling powder cocaine, and a gang from Baltimore sets up somebody, and those two don't like each other. And so eventually they just kill each other on the side of Route 32. So I think it's a problem, and I think you're going to start seeing more of it if we don't take an aggressive stance on these fellas showing up here and doing what they're doing. And that's where I think the Drug Task Force needs to be more involved in those issues, and a street level group needs to start working with the municipalities where these things are happening and go after them and make life uncomfortable for them, so they can get word back to New York and Baltimore that, pardon the pun, but there's a new sheriff in town, and he's not tolerating us setting up in houses here and selling our cocaine and heroin. This is the issue. So the gangs are up here because the people in this county will buy their heroin and cocaine. And the reason they're here is because they don't believe there's enough cops to stop them from doing it. And they get double the price of what they would get if you traveled to Baltimore to buy it. So why wouldn't they set up here? Why wouldn't they do business here? And you can call them Bloods, Crips, Dead Man Incorporated. I don't care what you call them. They form their own gangs when they know they can operate in a community and not be stopped or harassed or targeted by the police. So it is an issue, and it will continue to be an issue. And when people are shooting each other on the side of our roads, it's become the #1 issue.
Mr. Pacelli, any additional comment? Okay. Next to last question. And Mr. DeWeese, you get to answer first this time. As sheriff, how can you combat the aggressive driving that we're increasingly seeing on our roads and highways?
Stop them and write them tickets for driving aggressively. You know, that's the age-old issue, and especially in Carroll County because of the way the roads are. There's very few 4-lane roads, and aggressive driving is always and has been an issue. I think with cell phones, texting and driving, and those sort of devices, it's made it even more difficult. But I think that it's difficult because nobody's ever driving aggressively. When they see a marked police car around, they stop doing what they're doing. So I think that if we're going to target aggressive drivers, I think we need to use a different approach, whether it's unmarked cars or have people in covert vehicles looking for aggressive drivers. I know the federal and state government provide monies to put into overtime so we can enforce aggressive driving laws and find out where we're having the majority of our traffic collisions or the most serious traffic collisions and enforce laws in those areas. But if we're going to target aggressive driving, we have to be a little sneaky about how we target them. Because again, people just don't drive stupid when the police are around, well, at least not when I'm around. So targeting aggressive driving is difficult, but you have to use a targeted approach to it.
All right. Mr. Pacelli, as sheriff, how do you feel we can combat the aggressive driving increasingly on our county roads?
That's an age-old problem, and it's a pretty routine response. There's really nothing I can add to what he said. I was a motor officer for a number of years in Baltimore City. We had various initiatives to combat aggressive driving, and we would do the same thing up here. We're already doing that up here, so it's pretty much the same answer. I mean,
all right.
Yeah, there's really not much to add to that.
Okay. And the last question before the summations, and I believe, let's see, is this Mr. Deweese that's starting this time, or is it Mr. Pacelli who answers first? I think it's maybe Mr. Deweese. In your opinion, what special skills, qualities, and experience uniquely qualify you to be Carroll County Sheriff?
Well, it helps that I went to school here and I was raised in this community, so I have a vested interest in this county and the safety of it. So I told you that my entire life goes into the public schools every day. Everything that matters to me goes into the public schools. So my interest in safety is through the roof when it comes to the schools. Listen, I've been in law enforcement since I was 18 years old. And I've risen through the ranks of my organization all the way up to captain. And each time that I've been awarded a promotion, I've taken on more and more responsibility. In fact, my organization has put me in charge of things that very few men or women in the organization would be put in charge of. I currently oversee the Special Operations Division. So essentially, when something emergency happens or something's going bad in the state, I'm the guy they call to get us out of it, or to work through it, or to manage it. Over the course of my career, I've responded to, 200 barricades, thousands of search warrants. I've been put in leadership positions throughout my career in order to inspire and get troopers and civilians, and sometimes deputies, depending on the organization that I've overseen, to work in unison and to do the right thing. I think that, so I have all the education, I have master's degrees, I have all the experience, or the training in the world, and it's all over there, and you can take a look at it. But absolutely none of the education or none of the training mean anything without experience. And I've got an awful lot of experience. So that's pretty much why I think.
All right. Mr. Pacelli, in your opinion, what special skills, qualities, experience uniquely qualify you?
I have a wealth of leadership experience, documented success. Spent my formative years in Baltimore City, in one of the most violent cities in the United States. I have documented success in reducing crime and improving the quality of service, not only in Baltimore, but also at the University of Maryland Medical Center. I was a detective commander for the city police department. I had almost 50% of the city's criminal investigators in my command. This was 198 people. We investigated all non-fatal shootings, robberies, serious assaults, burglaries, and provided oversight with domestic violence. At the medical center, I was, for all intents and purposes, the chief of police there. I inherited a dysfunctional unit. I turned them into peak performers. We reduced crime by over 50%. We were nationally recognized. With the Carroll County Sheriff's Office, I have a unique viewpoint, so to speak, being in the trenches for the last 7 years, every day meeting residents, understanding their problems, hearing their complaints, implementing those things that I've learned over the course of my career in serving the public here in Carroll County, especially the town of Union Bridge, where I am credited with cleaning up the town square, which was overrun with juveniles and had a negative impact on the economy there. So I think I'm uniquely qualified due to the diversity of my experience, big city, the hospital, and now here in Carroll County. I think I have all the attributes needed to be an excellent sheriff. I have the drive and the ambition not to rise any further, but ambition to serve the public, reduce crime, and improve our quality of service.
All right. And we'll finish up with a summary by each of the candidates of up to 2 minutes. Mr. Pacelli, you get to go first.
Well, I kind of just gave my summary. I think this is interesting here. We have 2 qualified candidates. I want to implement community policing. I want to change the direction that we're going in. I want to get away from the status quo. I've been in the sheriff's office for 7 years. We're functioning the same way now that we were 7 years ago. We just have more guys. It's very traffic oriented. That's what they want. Marching orders are to go out and write traffic tickets. I want to see more time spent dealing with community issues. I want to see deputies spend more time partnering with the public and businesses. I want to have a dramatic impact on crime, just as I have experienced in Baltimore City, in Union Bridge, at the University of Maryland Medical Center. We are combating the status quo here, and we have to get away from that. One deputy said that he hopes that the sheriff's office or the county goes back to the state police so that we can continue to just do traffic. I find that appalling, that that's not what police work is about. I'm offering different solutions to our problems. I'm offering documented success as a crime fighter and public service to combat crime, improve service, and get us marching in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butts. Since the day I decided to run to be your sheriff, I've navigated the political process with character and integrity. I've run a clean and honorable campaign both in the primaries and in the general election. Never once have I politicked or created propaganda on why you shouldn't vote for my opponents, but always why you should vote for me. It is what the voters and citizens of this county expect of their sheriff. I understand the issues and have a plan to address them. If the citizens of this county are looking for a calm, cool, and collected sheriff, a person that methodically addresses the issues, no matter how big or small, a leader that commands respect and will have people follow him, not out of obligation, but out of that respect, then you should vote for me. I'm going to close by thanking my wife, Heather, my 3 children, Brett, Mackenzie, and Gavin, my mother, sisters and brothers, extended family, Dick, Lila, Chris, Chip Weaver, and your families, Larry and Kathy Souther, Vicki and Chris McDonald, Steve and Kathy Wance, the members of FOP Lodge 20, thank you, and all my supporters. It is not easy opening up every aspect of your life and letting people in it. These people and many others have supported me and have been the network that got me to this point and will get me beyond. I want to personally thank you all for the support and encouragement that you've shown me over the last 2 years. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the candidates for joining us this evening and our audience for their participation. Special thanks to Mr. Bill Butts for serving as moderator, and to the Carroll County Times, WTTR, and the Hometown Observer for helping to publicize the forums. Tonight's Sheriff Candidates Forums will be rebroadcast on Cable Channel 19 starting Thursday, October 23rd at 7:30 p.m. At that time, the program will also be available for viewing on the Community Media Center's website, www.carrollmediacenter.org. WTTR will rebroadcast the program on Sunday, October 26th at 10 a.m. Now, if you use Facebook, like us on Facebook, like the Community Media Center at Carroll County on Facebook. You'll get links to archived versions of sessions such as this, upcoming information on upcoming forums, as well as a lot of Community Media Center events and community events. Thank you all very much. Good night.